Please join us as we sing together this morning.
Welcome, everyone, to worship at First Unitarian Church in Portland, where our mission is to nurture the individual spirit and together live into the beloved community. To congregants joining us from home and to those of you here in the sanctuary, we are so glad to be with you. I'd like to share with you some announcements about upcoming church activities, all of which can be found on the church website and in the weekly e-news. I'm excited to share that our learning community has completed the reopening process for our children and youth of all ages. Yeah. We just added preschool classes and availability of the nursery for wee ones from 6 months to 2 years old. Most classes are open to new participants and take place during this service time from 11 to 12:15 p.m. Please visit the welcome table over in our Buchanan building for more information or check the learning community page of our website. Today at 1:30 p.m., you are invited to our final virtual social justice community gathering for the church year. Our monthly gathering is for all community members who are concerned with and or engaged with issues of justice, whether or not you are part of one of our church social action groups. Please join us for readings, music, reflection, and conversation. And next Wednesday, May 4th at 5:30 p.m., First Unitarian is co-sponsoring a special public worship service of Drum, which is the Diverse and Revolutionary UU Multicultural Ministries. This is an opportunity for the wider world of Unitarian Universalism to connect with Drum and to support its mission. So details are in this week's e-news. And today after service, we invite you to join other congregants for social hour. Those of you here in person can gather for fellowship and a cup of coffee or tea in Fuller Hall below the sanctuary, where our bookstore will be open and our social justice action groups will have information tables. And those of you joining us online can use the QR code at the end of the service to take you to the virtual social hour. So once again, welcome everyone. And now a word from our nominating committee.
Good morning. We are Joyce Gotch and
Dean Baker.
co-chairs of the nominating committee, and we're delighted to announce this year's 8 candidates for leadership positions on the nominating committee and the Board of Trustees. We are so grateful for these congregants who enthusiastically offer their service to our church community at this exciting transitional time. We ask the candidates who are present, please stand as your name is called and remain standing until all the names are read. Photos and biographies of each of the nominees will appear on your congregational ballot coming to you very soon. The new positions are all for 3-year terms. The nominees for nominating committee are Allison Jekyll, 1st term, Laura Jones, 2nd term, and Joanne Four, 1st term. Here.
And the the candidates for the Board of Trustees are John Bishop, the 1st term, Julia Griffiths, the 1st term, Leslie Poole Cosbow, completing a vacated term, and Roger Robinson for the 1st term, and Andy Wilson, who's in for the 2nd term. We are so delighted to have all these people. You'll have the opportunity to meet with these candidates via Zoom this afternoon. At 1:30, a QR code and a link will be provided at the end of the service. Thanks so much to these candidates. We're so delighted to have them volunteering to help our church grow. And thank you.
Thank you.
In just a moment, I'll invite us all to greet our neighbors as we're comfortable doing so here in the sanctuary. And if you're watching online and have access to the chat, you can use that to greet one another live online. So now let's say hello. Reverend Tom will light our chalice here in the sanctuary. And if you have a candle or chalice at home, I invite you to light that now as well. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love.
Words of poet Ross Gay. If you find yourself half naked and barefoot in the frosty grass, hearing again the earth's great sonorous moan that says, "You are the heir of the now," and one that says, "All of you will turn to dust and will meet you there," do not raise your fist. Do not raise your small voice against it. Do not take cover. Instead, curl your toes into the grass. Watch the cloud ascending from your lips. Walk through the garden's dormant splendor. Say only, "Thank you. Thank you." In our coming together here, let us say thank you. Let us say hello to this new day. Come now and let us worship. Please join as we sing together, "The Wind of Change Forever Blowin'." Please join now in our responsive reading by James Baldwin. For nothing is fixed, ever, forever, forever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born. We are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The seas rise, the light fails, lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. Let's join together now in our doxology, Spirit of Life.
Each week in our service, we share our offering with an organization whose mission is aligned with our own. This whole church year, we have focused our giving on climate justice programs that center frontline communities for climate action. For the month of May, we share our plate with East County Rising Community Projects. You probably know that Multnomah County is the most populous county in Oregon, encompassing Portland, Gresham, Troutdale, Fairview, and Wood Village. But you may not know that in East County, 1/5 of the population falls under the poverty line, and more than 1/4 of East County children face poverty, the highest rate in the state. East County is also the most racially and ethnically diverse area in Oregon. East County communities have been hit hardest by such environmental and racial injustices as heat islands, poor housing, air pollution, limited public transportation, and lack of green space. ECR Community Projects develops and harnesses the community's power through civic engagement, organizing, and leadership training to create an equitable and livable community. Their intersectional work to build grassroots leadership advances policies that are good for the well-being of all community members. ECR Community Projects has been the hub for successful coalition work to preserve and expand tree canopy and green spaces for climate resilience and human health. In order to share your offering, those of you who are here in person are invited to use the information card in the back of the seat in front of you. It has a web address and QR code that you can use to contribute online. And if you would like to give this morning via check or cash, you may drop that in the baskets that our ushers have out in the church lobby following the service. So thank you for your generosity, which sustains the ministry of this church and our community partners. This is the time each week where we share the joys and concerns of our community life together. You can light a candle in one of our side galleries and share a prayer request to be held by our ministers and lay ministers. And you can also email prayer requests to prayer@firstunitarianportland.org. Joys or concerns to be shared with the whole congregation can be sent to parishconcerns@firstunitarianportland.org. I want to share a reminder that a memorial service will be held for Don Prather this afternoon at 2 p.m. in the Elliott Chapel. Don died on February 6, 2020, and his memorial was originally scheduled for that spring. And in honor of Don's love of colors, his wife Holly asks people to bring a flower to add to the arrangement in honor of Don. Member Patty Clement is thrilled to announce the birth of her granddaughter, Esmeralda, or Esme, Itzel Ulin, on March 23rd. Esme's 2 older sisters welcomed her home with lots of kisses. Patty says that happily, her daughter Katie and husband Rudy moved back to Portland from New York City last summer, so Patty can give in-person kisses too. And we celebrate with members Kate Birdsall and Andrea Drury. Strictly for the Birds is a film based on Kate's story of being born transgender 20 years before the word existed. And as of this week, the film is available on several streaming services. Quoting Kate and Andrea, "We're grateful to have pursued this project because we believe stories like ours need to be told more widely, that our stories help show that through love and understanding and the kindness of others, each of us can grow into wholeness." Will you join me in a spirit of prayer? Please settle into your body and your breath and this moment. Spirit of life and love, God of many names and no name, great mystery. We are thankful again to gather in this community of faith and love. It is a blessing to share our joys and to celebrate the wonder of new life and lives well lived. Each week when we join our hearts in worship, we know that the whole of us includes a range of emotions, of life circumstances, of joy and pain. Some of us are here on this day to be held in community as we grieve loss or anticipate major transitions. Some are here to lend our unique voice and vibrations to the resonance of sacred music. Others join today to rejoice in a personal joy or in the communion of this community. And some are here simply as the time each week when we can rest into the embrace of this spiritual home, to let go of striving and to just be. No matter what has called each of us here, we are grateful for the whole of us and for the presence of love. As we sit together in a spirit of prayer and mindfulness, and as we go about the week ahead, may we each notice and honor the wondrous and interconnected web of life and know that we belong. May it be so. Amen. So let's sit together for another few moments of presence and silence. Please remain seated as we sing together.
Listening ears to truly hear. When you fall, let me kneel, lend a hand so you can rise. Let my heart encourage yours, our hearts will carry gentle friend, let me sing melodies to give you wings. May you find soft green hills to give you rest. May you be full of strength, like a mountain still and free. Wise heart, illumine us like stars upon the sea.
Our reading today is called In the Middle by Barbara Crooker. In the middle of a life that's as complicated as everyone else's, struggling for balance, juggling time. The mantle clock that was my grandfather's has stopped at 9:20. We haven't had the time to get it repaired. The brass pendulum is still. The chimes don't ring. One day you look out the window, green summer, the next, and the leaves have already fallen, and a gray sky lowers the horizon. Our children almost grown, our parents gone. It happened so fast. Each day we must learn again how to love, between morning's quick coffee and evening's slow return. Steam from a pot of soup rises, mixing with the yeasty smell of baking bread. Our bodies twine, and the big black dog pushes his great head between. His tail is a metronome, 3/4 time. We'll never get there. Time is always ahead of us, running down the beach, urging us on faster, faster. But sometimes we take off our watches. Sometimes we lie in the hammock, caught between the mesh of rope and the net of stars, suspended, tangled up in love, running out of time.
Threshold is our spiritual theme for this new month of May. Threshold. We cross thresholds all the time. Those of us here in person did to get into this building this morning. If we came through the main street doors, we stepped up and then over the threshold, and then we came up a whole series of stairs. If we came in a wheelchair or were using a walker or a scooter, the passage may well have been considerably more complicated. Which door do I go through to get into the building? And the elevator, it seemed to take a pretty long time. Thresholds can be places of welcome as well as barriers to negotiate. And for those of you online, there were, I expect, thresholds that you crossed as well, getting to the right place to view or hear this service, and that's assuming you have the equipment needed to do that. Or does it require getting yourself somewhere where you have that access? And maybe the threshold was more metaphorical in a, is this what I really want to be doing in this moment, or something else kind of way? Yes, we traverse thresholds every day of our lives, and some are more difficult than others. Much of the time, I expect, we don't think much about them. They can quickly become routine. But even if we may not recognize it, they apparently do have some meaning. I remember reading about a study some years ago that found that when we go from one room to another, when we pass through a doorway or over a threshold, that we are more likely to forget what it was we are doing. Now, if you're like me, this happens all the time, setting out to do something only to forget what it was you set out to do mid-journey. Well, this study found that crossing over a threshold from one space to another, that our minds actually do a kind of reset, as if to say, okay, cross that boundary, that task is finished, even when it isn't. We're more likely to forget what we set out to do. Now, spiritually speaking, thresholds, of course, are a metaphor for change and for transition. And change, we know, is perhaps the one thing we can actually count on in life. It was the Greek philosopher Heraclitus who said that, and he was right. It was the one constant in life. In the comings and goings of our lives, it's easy to find ourselves going from one place to another, and perhaps not paying all that much attention, even sometimes with some of the big changes in life. But I think it's important that we do take time and notice. We are conditioned, I think, to want to get from one place as quickly and as efficiently as possible, literally and spiritually speaking. Now, we have the capability with a map router to find the most efficient route to just about anywhere we want to go. And perhaps that can become our approach to life, no matter where it is we're traveling. But change may not always be so linear. With change can come fear of the unknown, of how it will be that we make it through. With change can come a disruption in our routines and the status quo as we know it. And that may not always be easy. Maybe sometimes we need to take a little more time and have a little more space. William Bridges years ago articulated a theory of how transition and change happen in our lives. He said we may first see it as a new beginning. That's what we focus on and think about. But in fact, he said, change first really often happens with an ending. A loss of something like a job or a relationship, or maybe it's a loss of some ability that we had, some change in our circumstance. But before we find our way to what will come after that beginning, there's this period in between when we've not quite left where we were, but we've not yet quite arrived at some new beginning. That's sometimes called the time in between or the middle time. And that can in some ways be the most difficult, because it's when we're most ungrounded, when we don't quite feel settled in either the old or the new. Bridges says that it is more often that we don't resist change as much as that time in between, the transition time, figuring out what that new place will be and what it will look and feel like. In that middle space, on that threshold, there is opportunity. It may be that in that space we're asked to figure out just where it is we are going and what we want that new place to mean and to be. It may not be a place that we've chosen, but a place where we start to more fully, where we come to know what is coming. And indeed, that may be what we need in any given moment, to not try to get to the new thing too quickly. But what if we pondered that threshold as a place to pause, a place to take stock, as a place to ask, how did I get here? Where is it that I'm going? Perhaps one of the most important tasks in the spiritual life is to make meaning, to understand where it is we are in the scheme of things, to be able to metaphorically step back and to take stock. Even when it's a change that we have chosen, it may be important to consider all the dimensions of the change we're in. Let me offer an example. When I was new to ministry and started officiating at weddings, I thought my job was to show up and guide the two partners through the ceremony and sign the legal documents. That was the important part of the wedding. So this was my first wedding. I was pretty nervous. I met the couple more than once, and we talked in great detail about what the ceremony would be. And yes, the spoken words and the legal parts were important. But what it took me a while to figure out, with several more weddings under my belt, was that yes, those details were important, but in some larger sense, I came to see my role was to make a space for some larger sense for this transition. In this case, a marriage to happen. Yes, two individuals were making this journey into married life, but it was along with their families and their friends. It was something that not only they were doing, but to some extent, everyone there was on this journey with them. I recall after that first ceremony, the father of the bride sought me out after the service, and he wanted to talk. He was processing what this meant for his relationship with his child, which was entering this new chapter. She was no longer going to be his little girl she had always been up until that point. And he was wondering, have I been a good father? Have I done all the right things by my daughter? Now, I will confess to you here many years later that when that first question was asked of me, the first question through my mind was, so why are you talking to me about this? But through the years, I've come to understand that his questions and his searching were all part of some larger threshold that he and his daughter and her spouse and their whole gathered community of loved ones were passing through, that they were all making this journey from one place to the next, and that in this case, this ritual we were all a part of helped to make that possible. With a little more experience through the years, I've come to understand that everyone who was part of such a gathering brings what they bring. This person who is remembering their own wedding and the happiness that has followed all these many years, or this person who is remembering the marriage that did not come to fulfill the hopes of that day, or this person who never had that wedding that they dreamed of their whole lives. All of those are in the mix all too often at such a gathering. All of that is part of what is present as two people make promises and journey across that threshold. We make our way through the passages of our lives individually and with others who accompany us. We make meaning, and through it make our way from one place to another. Now, in that case of the wedding, it's mostly about that new beginning, But I've also learned that it is important to pay attention to those losses that are present there too. And of course, not all changes are of our own choosing, and making our way through those can be especially hard. This happens when we face an illness, and maybe even when we look to the end of our life. Those passages are full of emotions, and especially for those closest to us. This is all part of the change. This is all part of some transition. This is all part of how we find our way forward. Whatever the circumstances, whether the change is something we've chosen or not. Times like these call us into a kind of liminal space where we're between where we've been and where we're going. And into that space we bring our histories and our stories, the blessings we've known, and also the times when the circumstances felt like anything like blessings. How we've made our way or not made our way. How an ending may have easily turned into some beginning, or how that journey may have been long and more difficult than we could ever have imagined. We bring our grief and our joy. We bring our sorrow and regrets, our hopes for what some new beginning might hold. All is part of that liminal time. It might be helpful for a moment to say a word about how it is we understand time. Now, the Greeks had two different words for time. The first, chronos, describes how we usually think of time. This is linear time, as if along a ruler, marking the minutes, the hours, the days, the weeks, the years. In our lives, we mark year after year, and the events fit along that continuum. One day comes after another day, and that comes after yet another day. But there's another kind of time, and that is called kairos. That has been called sacred time or time out of time. And this might better describe threshold moments and the way that time doesn't always seem to be quite so linear. Perhaps something much more circular. It's a time when we're most aware, I think, of our connection with something larger. Now, we've all had those moments, I expect, when we can remember something from a long, long time ago with great clarity, maybe for the rest of our lives. This may be a kairos moment. This is different from our ability to remember what it is we had for dinner 2 days ago. That memory, it seems, may never be found again. It's in that time that we're able to not only find ourselves in the present, but also hold all the times of our lives. Time becomes something much more fluid. We find ourselves remembering back to some time long ago, and that may be juxtaposed with a moment in the present, all together and all somehow part of a whole. That liminal time is what allows us to make meaning, to understand where it is we are, where it is we've been, and where it is we're going. Words again of Barbara Crooker that Dana read earlier. Each day we must learn again how to love. Between morning's quick coffee and evening's slow return, time is always ahead of us, running down the beach, urging us on faster, faster. But sometimes we take off our watches. Sometimes we lie in the hammock, caught between the mesh of rope and the net of stars, suspended, tangled up in love, running out of time. I think especially in these last years we have been in, it's important to mark the passage of sacred time in our lives. COVID has been a disruptor in so many ways in how it's scrambled so many things up. The losses of this time include the literal deaths around us and all around the world. But it's also the loss of time with beloveds, time doing things in life that give us meaning. It's disrupted our very sense of safety and how it is we are able to move or not to move in the world. But it's also, in this very disrupting, perhaps also made a space for us to see things differently. Maybe some of those routines and rituals needed disrupting. Maybe they had lost meaning, or maybe we've come to see just how meaningful those things were in our lives, and this time has brought a recognition of what is really most important. We're all still coming to terms on some level with this time and understanding what it actually means. But sometimes it's in the midst of that disruption that we find ourselves in such liminal moments when we're in between one place and some other place. These may be the times when we find some moment of clarity about our lives, a moment of awareness about where we are and where we want to be. They may mark some significant change. They are times when we're asked to pay attention. I don't know about you, but it feels as if this moment in time does feel extraordinary. We've been through a lot, and there are signs of having come through it, but not quite yet. But there are other signs that the meaning, the learning is still to be revealed completely. It's in this need to mark the losses of this time, the literal loss of life, yes, but also our own sense of safety in the world, our own sense of freedom to move about in the world, our own needs to be around the people we love and want to be with, our own sense of agency about what is possible. These times ask us to be awake, to note what we may not have been seeing in the midst of all that busyness, amid the routines, amid all the demands. Maybe we didn't need so much of that. Maybe what we really needed was some space to recognize it, some space to notice what might be emerging, some space to notice where and how we might imagine what we want to do, some space to imagine how life may be different, maybe even richer and fuller. It may be that these times offer an invitation to get out of those habits that can keep us in places where we really no longer want or need to be. It may be such moments that allow us to get past the fear of what's new and into a place of possibility and new beginnings. It won't be long before we witness the spring rites of passage like proms and graduations and rituals for our young people. Maybe it is marking one grade to the next. This church will witness the transition from one senior minister to the next in the upcoming candidating week with Reverend Allison Miller and beginning the process of covenanting with her. And it will say goodbye to Reverend Bill and marking his ministry and the relationships that have flowed out of this time in this life of this community. We're in a time of beginnings and endings. We're all very much in this sacred time together. Words again of poet Ross Gay. If you find yourself half naked and barefoot in the frosty grass, hearing again the earth's great sonorous moan that says, "You are the air of the now," and one that says, all you love will turn to dust and will meet you there. Do not raise your fist, do not raise your small voice against it, and do not take cover. Instead, curl your toes into the grass, watch the cloud ascending from your lips. Walk through the garden's dormant splendor. Say only thank you. Thank you. May we see the times we are in, this threshold we may be crossing over, as an invitation, as an opportunity. May we find space to mark what has been and also a space to mark what might be emerging, to hold it all together, to see it all as sacred. The thresholds we pass through happen every day, many of them forgotten as quickly as we pass from one space to another. But sometimes we may be offered an invitation to pause and to ask, how did I get here? Where is it that we're going? What is it that we need in just this moment? What is it that we need to leave behind? How is it that we're being asked to live? In these times of peril and of possibility, may we find where it is we need to be. And on that journey, may it have its share of gratitude, and may we make space for the holy to emerge as we all make our way through all the thresholds of our lives. So be it. Amen. Will you pray with me now? Spirit of life and of love, be with us this day and through all the days, through all the thresholds of our lives. May the through line of those passages be an awareness of our connection to each other and to this earth. May the through line of those passages be an awareness of the many ways we are blessed. May the through line be that no matter what change may bring, through it all, we are held in love. Amen. Let's sing together as we close our service today. Let's rise in body and in spirit and sing, Get Right, Church. In all the thresholds of our lives, may we know each and every day that we are held in love and in care. Go now from this place in love and in hope. This is the day we've been given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace. Practice love. Amen.